Now, what we did was we spoke about the challenges of shopper marketing to both the brand owners as well as the retailers. And this is the set of feedback which brand owners had. I mean, the life of a retail level merchandising is 2 to 3 hours for a poster, a typical FMCG. I mean, even I've experienced it. I mean, so a brand comes and puts up a poster. You have the other brand coming after 1 hour, putting up a poster on top of it. That is what happens in the retail environment. Retailers don't cooperate. I mean, we all know that. ATL, another usual problem is, ATL agencies don't understand the retail environment. Shopper marketing vendors are either executors or just designers. So these are the kind of challenges that we heard when we spoke to brand people. And when we spoke to retailers, they had a different set of challenges. They can give you space, but you have to customize it. So how do you create a working system which starts understanding the retail environment? Space is valuable. Their units block space. So how do you create that? Understanding the constraints of space in the retail environment. How do you create a merchandising unit? How do you create shopper marketing opportunities? Now, coming back to, if these are the challenges, how do we go about solving for this? Which is very, very critical. If we have to create a win in the retail environment, we have to solve these challenges at the retail front. So we start with first shopper research and creative asset adaptation. So we would like to do, definitely we will do shopper audits. We will understand the kind of retail environments in which shopper marketing has to exist. And very importantly, we will take the creative asset, which is the mainline campaign, which is the mainline creative, and adapt it into the 6 feet or the 3 feet or the even 1 feet. We need to take the creative asset, adapt it to the retail environment, which is a very, very different task. And we showed you how the creative can actually change, or even the messaging can actually change from the 6 feet, the 3 feet, and the 1 feet. The second is about design and material consulting. This is something which is very, very critical. And I think Rajmohan, I'd asked Rajmohan to speak because he's the expert in this area.
Thank you. Thank you, Subhash. So I'll put it this way. Design and material consultation, be it out of store, in store or store design. Today's retail environment, as you said, demands a very powerful concept first. So based on the research inputs, whatever we get from the shopper research input, once when the concept is finalized or freeze, what happens is we get to the next stage, wherein we build a perspective on the concept and the elements of a shopper marketing. So once when we do it, it's all a fancy, very design. It's a fancy design, fabulous, all the stuff. But the same design has to be validated for other things also, because it's just a design before, as a design. But once when it is to be executed, then it needs to be validated. Validated in the sense, validated to the scope for optimum space utilization is number one. Then adaptation of different sizes is the next thing. So that, and also the scalability of that product. All this needs to be validated first. In doing so, first we will have to get into the conversion of the design into an engineering design. Engineering design, once when this is done, we get into the engineering design. The CAD designers, we brief the CAD designers, and he comes out with his spec, material usage on it, for the stability purpose of it, all this stuff. He comes out on a clean, specific specifications. So what happens is, see, when you have every details with us, like right from the material usage, like height of the product, the stability of the product, all those stuff. What happens is, once we get to the material stage, the question arises which is the material to be used, whether it is a temporary structure or a permanent structure. So if the shelf value is going to be less than 6 months, we call it a temporary structure. If it is more than 9 months, then we call it a permanent structure. So whether it is a permanent structure or a temporary structure, that is one aspect of it. So say for example, you wanted to have a permanent structure. Permanent structure, if you come into material usage, there are two kinds of material usage. One is like um, the structural part, you have a different material. And then the other one is the display area, where you have a different set of materials to be used there. Okay. So when it's the structural part, you have n number of materials again in the structural part, right from mild steel to stainless steel, even wood for that matter, wood, acrylic, cardboards, all those stuff, it's all the structural part of it. Then comes the other part, which is the display part. So when it comes to display part, you have a different kind of material there. What happens is displaying, see, printing materials is one factor. Printing materials. When it comes to printing material, whether it's a sticker, then you have vinyls, ready-made vinyls, printed vinyls, all those stuff. And to enhance that, you have different processes, in enhancing the product. Like, you have engravings. If it is a wood, you can have a wood engraving, or you have special coatings. Then everything depending on the internal environment of any store. Like, depending on the stores. If it is for a if it is for a multi brand big stores, then the product has to be designed for that store, just to have a contrast and between other brands, and just breaking the clutters. So what happens is, then again, when I talk of materials, you have reflective materials, you have non-reflective materials, all this stuff. So the correct usage of the material is one which is very, very important in doing so when you analyze a design and convert that to a product design. So what happens is, when considering all this, the usage of material, then comes the manufacturing part of it. Scalability, I'm saying. If it is going to be over one store, then the process is entirely different. But when you want to do it pan India, pan Tamil Nadu, whatever, if you want to do it, then the scalability has to be there. The process and the entire process changes. So what happens is, once when all this is being designed and on a engineering part in CAD software, so you get a very clear picture of what is the material usage, what is the size, or the spec, everything gets into perfection. And then what happens is, before getting into the pricing part, we get into the prototype model. Prototype model is where you actually know the stability and all this, whatever you had on the software, that is to be tested only on the prototype model. What happens is, right from the material usage and the costing. So once when the prototype is done, you arrive at a more or less closer pricing of the product, whatever exact pricing of the product. So once when the prototype is approved, or if there is going to be any discrepancies, or if there is going to be any suggestions on the different materials to be used, again we can change the a prototype and use the materials, and we can arrive at a very perfect costing. And then the scalability, then whatever you wanted to do, like any numbers, we can raise a budget on that. So this is how things are done. But what I would emphasize is, generally, whatever the design, whatever the merchandising element we design, or we present it before the client, the final decision is being done by the client based on the cost factor. So when you get into the cost factor again, see, we show a very good design, very good, which is executable and all the stuff. But when it comes to costing, then again, that is going to be a different perspective on the same design. So that is it. So what happens is, so right from the material, so you get into this, lesser kind of lesser costing materials. Then the process, we change the process of the manufacturing. All the stuff changes. So when it comes to costing, the major factor which affects the costing of the material is the costing of the product is the process, then the material part of it. The usage
I think Rajmohan is raising some fantastic points around the process of engineering and the kind of material usage. I think that's the kind of complexity that this particular section has, and Rajmohan is an expert on that. Post that, it's about execution and the deployment inside the store. So we want to be an end-to-end shopper marketing outfit.